This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we've got a crazy story out of northeastern Pennsylvania in Luzerne County. So the county manager, Romilda Crocamo, had taken it upon herself to remove drop boxes in the county, citing safety concerns. And this was after the county board had already voted in February in favor of having drop boxes for the election. So what's the update here?
So the update is the drop boxes are back. She was sued, and the Attorney General of the state threatened legal action against her. And then so she reversed her decision and put the drop boxes back. But let's not pass by the abnormality of this behavior. I mean, the fact is, this was a drop box. This is a secure metal container. This is like saying that there is a mailbox outside the U.S. Postal Service, and I'm going to go take it because I'm afraid of safety and security concern. I mean, Brian, what the hell?
But it's basically the same thing. And so to that point then, this decision belongs to the board who voted in favor of drop boxes. So how is Crocamo removing them any different than me just going in there and removing a drop box? She has zero legal authority to do so. So where's the punishment here?
Right. This is the problem, right? We are weeks before an election. Everybody is trying to figure out how to run these elections when you have people who, in some instances, are misguided, in some instances are mistaken, but in some instances are just, election deniers. I mean, every day we read in the newspaper more stories about local officials or election deniers. And I'm not saying that this woman is or is not. I'm just saying that like we are trying to figure out how to run an election where you have a lot of disinformation and misinformation that is causing really aberrant behavior. And you're right. Like at some fundamental level, we wind up eventually, if this is allowed to continue, with this kind of election vigilantism where like random people are like, well, I heard that the county manager thinks the drop boxes are not safe. So now that in fact, I'm going to take matters into my own hand and I'm going to go take the drop box away. Like it is just the utter decay of the Republican Party and the misinformation and disinformation that they spread that has caused this kind of ridiculous behavior attacking drop boxes. And, we are now seeing the deadly consequences of this same kind of behavior around some of the hurricanes, where the same forces of misinformation and disinformation on the right are now putting people's lives at risk.
Right. I mean, to your exact point, like Republicans, by going out and saying, because Republicans want to frame this administration as being inept, and they're saying there's no more money left in the disaster relief fund for FEMA because they gave it all to the migrants. There are people out there who may hear those people say that and take them at their word and not even bother applying for disaster relief that they need because they think that all the money went to migrants. And like that's the people who get screwed are the people who are gullible enough to believe these Republicans who should be in positions of power, who are in positions where we should believe what they say, and yet they're just so focused on spreading and perpetuating misinformation because they think it's going to help them in the next election. But again, to my earlier point, the people who are getting screwed here are not those Republicans at the top. They are the people who believe them. They're going to be left, high and dry, not actually applying for disaster relief that they need because they were gullible enough to believe the politicians who are supposed to be telling the truth.
And that is the same thing we're seeing here with this drop box case in Pennsylvania. The losers in all of this are the voters who now won't trust using a ballot drop box, who won't trust vote by mail. I wrote about this for Democracy Docket a few weeks ago about how the Republican Party is like Sisyphus trying to push a boulder up the hill only to have a roll back down. The professional Republicans are like, look, everyone, if you're a Republican voter, vote early, vote by mail, use drop boxes, do all of the above. And every time they are at the precipice of convincing people that, Donald Trump rolls the boulder down the hill over them again because he continues to spread this misinformation, disinformation. So then, of course, you have people who pick up on it and they act on it. And who are the losers there? It's not ultimately the Republican elite. Donald Trump still votes by mail. Right. The people who are the losers in this are the voters who consume these lies, who think drop boxes are not safe, who think vote by mail is not safe, and then they wind up disenfranchised because on election day they can't get to the polls.
Right. And you have been beating this drum over and over. For those who aren't yet subscribed to Democracy Docket, I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. It is an excellent outlet to get any news regarding elections or voter safety as we head into this election. Marc, we saw a similar story out of Wausau, Wisconsin that I covered a couple of weeks back, where clerks have the authority to approve drop boxes in that state, and the county clerk did in Wausau, but the Republican mayor decided to just remove it. So why are we establishing a precedent where Republicans can just get away with literally stealing drop boxes just because they're all playing make-believe about the danger of those drop boxes? Like there's a word called kayfabe, and we use it a lot for professional wrestling, where everybody knows that it's fake, but you kind of all agree collectively to pretend that it's real because that's the only way it works. Like everybody that watches WWE, when I was growing up, it was WWF. We all knew that it was fake, but we all just agreed collectively to pretend that it was real so that the world worked. And I feel like that's what's happening here, where these Republicans are coming out and making up these conspiracies. Some may actually, be high on their own supply, basically, and believe what they're saying, but a lot of them don't. And yet they're not being faced with the same punishments that they should, because we are all humoring this totally bullshit notion that the election was stolen, even though there was no proof, even though there were 65 court cases that went forward to try and prove fraud, and not in a single case were they able to do that including in front of like 8 judges who Donald Trump himself appointed. So aren't we doing more damage to ourselves by virtue of not actually holding these people to account because we are all just agreeing to humor these people who are acting in bad faith?
Well, I think I think you are spot on about a couple of things. First of all, we need to be morally clear and factually clear about what's going on. And too much of the mainstream media, and I try not to use this as a platform to bash the mainstream media because there are a lot of good reporters trying to do the best they can. But honestly, part of this is because Donald Trump will go on a stage and he will tell lie after lie after lie. He'll tell lies about migrants. He'll tell lies about a hurricane. He'll tell lies about sharks and boats and windmills and dead and fictitious characters. And the media, like you said, they feel like, well, we kind of need to humor this as if it is normal, when in fact it's completely abnormal. And so you're right. When you wind up with circumstances where you have election deniers who are, frankly, they are just subverting free and fair elections. That's all they're doing. There is this need to kind of soft pedal it in the mainstream media because they are trying to suggest, well, there are sort of two sides to this. There's one side that steals drop boxes and another side that doesn't. And, they're both motivated by something, right? And yeah, it is a slippery slope that can lead you to a place of utter lawlessness and also a lack of good information and moral clarity about the importance of free and fair elections and democracy.
So I want to finish off with one more question out of Pennsylvania, and that is that the PA Supreme Court also punted 2 high-profile cases regarding the election. So what were they, and what happens now that the court declined to weigh in?
Yeah, so this is part of a long saga that you and I have covered and many of the people watching this are familiar with. That goes all the way back a few years ago. It started with naked ballots. These will be ballots that are cast in Pennsylvania by putting them in the outer envelope rather than a security envelope inside the outer envelope. And when those count, then there were a series of cases over what if the voter, when they sign the outer envelope, they put the wrong date? What if they don't put any date? Right? We had a lot of things about this. And so there have been a lot of cases that have come up on this. And there were 2 cases recently. One by the RNC, where they asked the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to take up a case to bar counties from notifying voters that their mail-in ballots had minor defects and giving them an opportunity to fix it. Many, many counties in Pennsylvania allow voters to so-called cure their mail-in ballots if there's a small error, and the RNC wanted the court to stop that. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court said it is too close to the election. We are not going to hear this case. You could have raised this much earlier. So no, we're not going to hear this case. On the flip side, a group of voting rights organizations led by the ACLU brought a case to try to argue that counties have to count mail-in ballots that are missing a correct or so-called correct handwritten date on the outer envelope And the state Supreme Court sort of told them the same thing, like, too late. We are not in October going to be hearing these cases for the first time. So neither of those cases are heard, and we will see where we are after the election.
Well, I think that's a good moment to bring up the fact that in this very election, voters in Pennsylvania will have the opportunity to flip the legislature so that it's completely in control of Democrats. Right now, it's a split legislature. State House and the state Senate are under Democratic control and Republican control. We can actually get to a place where we can pass common sense rules surrounding our elections, like Michigan has, for example, so that we're not engaged in this constant litigation where Republicans do every single thing that they can to try to disenfranchise voters, including saying that if you don't have a certain date that has no bearing on the actual legitimacy of the ballot itself, that date, if it's not perfect, then you're completely disenfranchised. Like, these are all tactics, purposeful tactics to make sure to disenfranchise people by giving as many opportunities for voters to screw up as possible, knowing full well that a lot of people are going to be susceptible to that. So I think we should absolutely take advantage of this moment right now as we head toward November to note that even though this specific instance won't be properly adjudicated in court in time for the election, that all of this can be changed so that we can actually have some common sense election rules in Pennsylvania, instead of kind of doing this thing where we chase after, both sides chase after each other in search of some elusive, momentary wins that they can get on the other side.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something that I hope everyone picks up. We have said time and time again in these episodes that everyone needs to make sure they are registered to vote, they have a plan to vote, and that they vote. And then we usually say from top of the ticket, from Kamala Harris all the way down. And I think now is a time, Brian, for you and I to pause and explain to people, as you just did, why it is important not just that they vote for Kamala Harris for president. That is super important. Not just that they vote for, in Pennsylvania, Bob Casey for U.S. Senate. Very, very important Senate race. Not just that they vote for their members of Congress in some very important House races in Pennsylvania, but also for their state legislatures. Because in state after state after state, whether it's Pennsylvania or it's Arizona or it's Wisconsin, the state legislatures, the difference between a Democratic-controlled legislature and a Republican-controlled legislature is day and night when it comes to these democracy issues. Look how much good Democrats were able to do in Michigan. Look how much good Democrats were able to do in Minnesota when they got full control of the legislature. And so thank you for pointing that out in Pennsylvania. And I hope people listen to you and to me, that they vote not just from the top of the ticket, but all the way down.
And of course, you've been beating this drum for years now in Democracy Docket. So for those who are watching, if you're not yet signed up for Democracy Docket, again, it's the news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting and elections. It's an excellent resource, and it is especially important right now as we head into this home stretch before the November election. So if you're not yet subscribed, I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.